And welcome to Face Off on France 24. Is it time for the French president to reshuffle his unpopular government? With unemployment stubbornly high, François Hollande and his prime minister are both struggling with approval ratings under 30%. Here in Paris, observers are anticipating what is known in French as a remaniement, a reshuffle to refresh the governing team. But earlier this week, France's Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault brushed off suggestions that he might soon be replaced, telling journalists he was not used up and tired. Philippe Turle, welcome to Face Off on France 24. You're a journalist at RFI, Radio France International. That's France 24 sister radio. Welcome to Face Off. Also with us, Stéphane de Vries. You're a Paris correspondent for the Dutch TV channel RTL4. You also run a blog on life in France, politics, society,
media.
And media, of course. Yeah. I'll start with you, Philippe Turle. Under the Fifth Republic here in France, it's really the responsibility, the duty of the president to choose a prime minister. When things go wrong, the president has the power to change that prime minister. Some call it a sort of a nuclear weapon at the disposal of the French president. Is it time for Hollande to sack his prime minister?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer in a very simple answer, if you like, because there is growing dissatisfaction with the government, and there's even greater dissatisfaction with the two heads of the executive in France, President Hollande, who is under 20% or just over 20% of popular opinion ratings, and the Prime Minister, who is also very, very low in the opinion poll ratings as well. So there's this growing pressure on President Hollande to do something about it, to rejuvenate his governing team. But we're just ahead of municipal elections in this country, and they're going to be followed by European elections. They're two crucial polls which, if he were to change the government just before and then lose the elections afterwards, or lose a lot of support during those elections, people are going to say, well, maybe you should have done it afterwards. It might be better for him to wait until after the poll to see how badly he does, and then if he needs to do a cabinet reshuffle, to do it then. So there's no ideal time to do it. And one other thing is that in the past in France, it's worked out to be quite funny, because several times during previous governments, people have always said, oh, the Prime Minister will not last very long. He will be sacked soon, they'll find someone else. And all through the Sarkozy period of 5 years in office, his Prime Minister was François Fillon. And right from the start, people said, oh, François Fillon won't last long. He'll be kicked out, there'll be a new team coming in afterwards. But François Fillon stayed with Nicolas Sarkozy for 5 years. So there's no guarantee that Jean-Marc Ayrault will go, but I think there will be a government reshuffle. But my bet is it will be after these elections.
Stéphane de Vries, what is your feeling? Is there a problem with Jean-Marc Ayrault?
I don't know if there's a problem with Jean-Marc Ayrault. There's probably a problem with the government as a whole, and also with the president, of course. The French public, as Philippe already said, is very dissatisfied with the current government, with the current president as well. So changing the prime minister for just another prime minister, who is probably already a minister in his cabinet, is just cosmetics. It won't change a lot when it comes to politics. It won't suddenly solve the problem of unemployment, which is probably the biggest problem this country has. So it's basically, I don't know, it's probably just to say to the French electorate that François Hollande can change, he will probably change his politics by changing his prime minister, but in reality it wouldn't change a lot.
There have been quite a few, just a quick reason why things are so unpopular, because people consider that what François Hollande has said has not been done. He's been saying, well, I'm not going to raise taxes, and up goes VAT on the 1st of January. I'm going to inverse the unemployment rate by the end of December 2013. Unemployment is still going up. People are saying, well, you know, where's the economic growth that we've been promising? Well, there's no economic growth at the moment. It's still 0.3 when they need 1.5 to bring down the unemployment rate. So people don't believe François Hollande, and if they don't believe François Hollande, well, they don't believe the government.
Now, one of his ministers is actually pretty popular here in France. It's the Interior Minister, Manuel Valls. Some believe that he would make a good prime minister.
Well, he makes a lot of people think of Nicolas Sarkozy. He's often compared to Sarkozy because he's the minister of the Interior Minister. He's also pretty tough on anything that's related to immigration, for example. So he's also popular within the people who didn't vote for François Hollande. So that would be a smart move. But we have seen this week's approval ratings, and Manuel Valls is actually going down. And oddly enough, Fabius, the foreign minister, is going up. But he was already a prime minister when Brezhnev was
back in the
in
80s.
charge.
Back in the 80s. There is a risk, of course, if you appoint a young, dynamic prime minister like Manuel Valls. We saw under President Chirac that it really gave a platform to Sarkozy, who was never prime minister, but a very prominent minister. So there's a risk, of course, that in the end, Hollande might end up being overshadowed by someone like Valls.
Valls is part of this young group of 40-something ministers who are young, dynamic, are popular. He's more put on the right wing of the Socialist Party, so he's appealed to right-wing voters in the opposition who see him, as Stefan was saying, like a sort of young version of Nicolas Sarkozy. He's gone down the opinion polls due to, I think the basic reason is that people don't think that he's clamped down on insecurity in France as much as he said he would, just like Nicolas Sarkozy promised he would and didn't manage to. There's one or two other issues that people are dissatisfied with. So he's in a slightly weaker position. So we now see this extraordinary rise of Laurent Fabius, who is very well known on the international front as a former prime minister in the 1980s under François Mitterrand, who's 67 years old, like the old wise man of the French government, who many people are saying, well, why don't you choose Laurent Fabius? He was the youngest prime minister in 1985 or 1984, and he could be the oldest prime minister in 2014. So he is someone who reassures French people because he's old, he's experienced, he's a foreign minister. People like that. And I think Manuel Valls, maybe it's a little early for him to become prime minister of France.
So what do you think will happen?
Well, I think, as Philip already said, that François Hollande probably will wait until after the European elections, because it would not be very wise.
So not until May?
No, I don't think so, because it wouldn't be wise, because if he loses the local elections, and then he loses the European elections again, then he will have to change again. So I think it would be wiser to wait. And since we're talking about this already, well, almost since François Hollande was elected, I think we can wait a couple of more weeks.
There's one person whom we haven't mentioned who is being earmarked as a future minister. That's Ségolène Royal, who also many international people know as his former partner,
the mother of his children.
His four children, who is not a minister, who wanted to be the head of the National Assembly, but didn't manage to do that after the last election because she lost the seat she was running for. She is sort of in the wings as possibly becoming an education minister or maybe even interior minister herself. And many people are saying, well, Ségolène Royal, who ran for president in 2007 and lost against Nicolas Sarkozy, what a shame she didn't run last time around, because maybe if she'd been elected, she might have been a better president than her former partner is at the moment.
Family story. Now let's move to the other big political story in France this week. Did the leader of the main Conservative party, the UMP, overcharge former President Nicolas Sarkozy during the last presidential election? Le Point magazine has accused Jean-François Copé of having used his party to enrich his own friends. He denies the allegations and says he's the victim of a plot to discredit him. Let's listen to him.
For the last few days, myself and those close to me have been subjected to a witch hunt. I want to tell the people of this country that I have always carried out my duties with integrity. I am not a fool, and neither are the French people. They would never let the wool be pulled over their eyes so close to an important election.
Stéphane de Vries, this scandal is highly embarrassing for Jean-François Copé.
Yeah, he almost makes me cry the way he's victimizing himself. I mean, it's a comédie française. It's a strategy that always works, like saying I'm the victim and the journalist.
Does it really work? Do you think it's working?
Well, in his mind it works, because he gave this conference earlier this week, and he really wants. He appeals to the French people to show that he's talking about a witch hunt. I mean, we're in 2014, thinking that there's still witch hunts is not very modern, and he's also blaming the journalists for doing their job. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, Le Point is probably it's not really right wing, but it's more on the right side of the French media spectrum. So it's actually somebody of his own camp that's now attacking him. But the journalists just did their work, and that's all.
Right. And this poses a question of credibility for France's main opposition party. Obviously, it's a divided party, but I think one person must like the situation. It's France's two. Okay, well, there's France's most active pensioner, Nicolas Sarkozy. That's the boss.
Now, the funny thing about this story is, just to recap on it, is that Copé is accused of being involved with a company called Pygmalion, which was hired to organise the election campaign events of his UMP party. And they're now accused of having overbilled all these events and putting money in their pockets on the back of the UMP, and indirectly Copé, because they were friends of Copé's who ran this business. And that's what has been exposed by Le Pen. Now, the question everyone is asking, well, who's behind this and why is it happening just before the elections? Who is trying to destabilise Jean-François Copé? If you read the article, it's not very clear because there's no real proof in there. It's sort of affirmations of this happened. They were overcharged, but they only just asked another company that organises events, which actually works for the Socialist Party, to compare the cost that Pygmalion asked. So it's unclear exactly what the proof is in this. But the question is, who is behind this? Well, there's one person who could be François Fillon, who's his Copé's main adversary,
former Prime Minister who ran against
the UMP and who lost to take over the UMP. But I don't think it's Nicolas Sarkozy, because if you look at the front headline of Le Point, it says, "Was Sarkozy stolen from?" Or who? So I don't think it would have been Sarkozy. I think it's Le Point which would like Sarkozy to come back. And anyway, if Sarkozy does come back, Copé will not be able to run for president, and all of this will fall flat.
Okay, well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there as we're running out of time. Thank you very much, Stéphane de Vries, Philippe Turl, for taking part in this edition of Face Off. Please stay with us. We'll bring you more news on France 24.